Well, welcome tonight to your May Connect group. We're well into spring and summer is just a little bit over the hill, and it's a wonderful time of year again. Things are growing, exciting. It's getting warmer. The promise of summer is ahead of us, and it's a great time of year. So glad that you were able to be here tonight at your Connect group in May. Last month we started a new series, a new theme for the rest of this year, and it's faith. And what we're looking at is kind of going back to the foundation of our walk with God, of our walk with each other and everything we do. And we've discovered last month that it's all by faith. Faith is the foundation of our relationship with God. And we went through a list of things that the Bible says are ours are by faith. We're saved by faith. Well, we're saved by grace. It's received through faith. We approach God by faith. We walk in the blessings of God. We receive things that God has for us by faith. We're supposed to live a lifestyle of faith, of just trusting in God for everything. And so we laid that foundation last time to kind of introduce you, remind us why faith is such a central and vital subject, not only for us to study, but also for us to live out. It doesn't do us any good if we study it and then we don't begin to live it out. And the wonderful thing about life is it gives you opportunities to exercise and develop your faith. And we're going to learn how to develop your faith down the road. But right now, we're learning to identify where our faith is. But tonight, what we're going to talk about is what is faith? Just what is it? Because so much of the time I find out, even in my own life, in my early years, and even now in talking to people, there's a real lack of understanding of what faith is. It's a very clear, precise, distinct thing. And once we go through this teaching, hopefully you'll know when you're in faith and when you're not in faith. It's not something you have to guess about. So what we're going to get into tonight is we're going to get into what faith is. We're going to talk first of all tonight about what faith is, and then next month we're going to get into what faith isn't. That's a very important thing to understand because a lot of times we're missing it because we think we're in faith and we're not. We're doing something else. So let's go to Hebrews chapter 11. This is the classic definition of faith, and we're going to break it down a little bit, and then I'm going to kind of give you a functional or an operating definition. Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Some translations use a little different words. It's the confidence or the assurance, but it's basically this idea. Now, I've looked this up and studied in the original language, and this is pretty close to it. So let's break it down. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. Let's talk quickly about what is substance. Substance is something that your sense allows your senses to verify is really there. This is a little water bottle. I don't have to guess whether this water bottle is here or not because I can feel it. Because it has substance to it, my senses can detect it. Therefore, I have full assurance that it exists and it's there. And because I can see it, I'm very certain what it is. So it doesn't take any faith to have confidence that this is a water bottle and I have a water bottle because my senses, my touch, my eyes verify that it's there. So substance is what allows our senses to have, allows us to have confidence that something exists through our senses. Now, the hope, just look at my notes again. This is how we verify that something is real in this natural material realm because our senses verify it. We see it, touch it, feel it, taste it, or we hear it. And we've learned to rely on our senses to do that, to tell whether something's there, whether we can rely on it. The chair you're sitting in right now, you had confidence that it was there, and the proof of it is you just went and sat down in it. You didn't have an engineer check it to make sure it was safe. So we're accustomed to using our senses to tell us whether we can have confidence that something is really there. Okay. The hope here refers for things that we do not yet have possession of, but we're expecting. So faith allows us to have confidence that something that we are hoping for, but we don't have yet, is really there, and we're going to have it. Again, with this water bottle, I don't have to hope for it because I have it now. But if you told me I'm going to have a you're going to bring a water bottle into me, I don't know for sure that you have one or it's there. So the only way I can have confidence about that is to have faith in your word that you're telling me the truth. So that faith stands as a substitute for what my senses normally give me the assurance of. That's what that first part of this verse is talking about. And the second part really kind of goes into the same thing. So again, hope refers to the things we do not yet have possession of, but we're expecting. So both of these things we're going to talk about refer to things that are not yet in our possession, but faith allows us to have confidence that we will have them to such a degree that we act as if we already do have it. I'll give you an example of that in a few minutes. Okay. Now, the rest of this, it is the evidence of things not seen. It is the evidence of things not seen. Well, evidence has a special meaning to me because most of you know that I was a lawyer before I became a pastor. What is evidence? I'm sure you've all seen courtroom on TV shows and things like that. In a courtroom, the whole purpose of a trial is to prove certain facts, either to a jury or to the judge. And these are facts that the jury didn't get to witness. If it's a car accident and who was at fault, the jury wasn't standing at the street corner and saw the plaintiff, the defendant, go right through the red light and hit the plaintiff. So evidence has to be presented to that jury so the jury can make a decision of what the facts of that case are, because they can't see what happened because they weren't there. So evidence is a substitute for having actual first-hand knowledge of what happened. So you have witnesses that testify of what they saw. That's one kind of evidence. Sometimes you have actually a piece of material. It may be a knife in a murder case or something like that, and that's called tangible evidence. That's the murder weapon, and the jury gets to see what that murder weapon looks like, but that murder weapon is evidence. It points towards something that they can't see. So when it says, remember, what faith is a substitute for these things. So in our natural life, we're used to having things with substance that tell us something. We're used to having evidence that points towards something, and we're not in a courtroom. Instead, God's talking to us. God's dealing with us. So His Word becomes a substitute. That becomes our evidence of what God is willing to do, what God's like. It stands in the place of evidence, of the thing itself. That's what evidence does. So faith is the substance of things hoped for. It is the evidence, it is the proof of things not yet seen. Now, things that are seen are things we know we have. Again, I know I have a water bottle because I see it. I know I have a faded pink shirt on because I can see it and I can feel it. So I don't need evidence of that. I have the thing itself. But if I can't see something, in order to have confidence that it's there and it's real, I have to have evidence of that. So to boil all this down, Hebrews 11:1 says faith takes the place of the substance or of the evidence that we're used to relying on to prove to us that something we can't see and we don't yet have in our hands is real. Let's go to a different definition now. Let's go to Mark chapter 11. And this is in a setting where Jesus is teaching His disciples what faith is. So I call this a functional or a living example. And Jesus has just, as He was going out one day, walks by a fig tree. There's no figs on it, so He says, let no man eat fruit of it again. And they come back from Jerusalem, they go spend the night, and as they're coming back again, they're walking past this fig tree, and it's withered overnight from the roots up. I mean, it is fallen over, shriveled up. That has to be supernatural. And Peter says, look, Master, the tree you cursed, it's cursed from, it's dried up from the roots. Jesus wasn't astonished, but the disciples were. And Jesus uses this as a teaching example. And He says in verse 22, key, have faith in God. That's the foundation of this. Have faith in God. And He says, if you have faith in God, then whosoever shall say unto this mountain, probably pointing to one, be thou taken up and cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says shall come to pass, he will have what he says. And then Jesus turns that around into prayer. He says, therefore I say unto you, whatsoever things you desire, when you pray, when you ask God, believe that you have received it, and then you shall have it. So Jesus is teaching them how to function in this type of faith. The mountain refers to something that's impossible for man to do. It's impossible for you and I to move a mountain. And so Jesus chooses as an example, say, if you've got something in your life that is impossible for you to do, God's able to do it, because nothing's impossible with God. And here's what you do. You speak to that mountain. Tell it to do what you want it to do. That's easy to do. But here's the key. But you must believe in your heart, and we'll talk about that later. You must believe in your heart that what you said shall come to pass, and then you shall have what you said. And now he brings that over into prayer when we pray. So when we ask God, when you pray, whatsoever things you desire, when you pray, at the time you pray, believe that you have received it when you ask, and then you shall have it. So the order with God is you ask, and when you ask, you believe that now you have received it, even though you don't have it in your hands. Remember what we talked about a few minutes ago? Faith is the substitute for having it in your hands to give you the same confidence that it's yours that you would have if you did have it in your hands. So this is where it comes into play. Jesus said, when you pray, believe that that prayer is answered with the same certainty as if you saw the answer in your hands. And if you'll do that, then the last part of the verse is, then you shall have it. So our role in operating in faith is to ask, first of all, and we'll learn later on. A lot of times, the reason we really don't ask from our heart is we're not confident we're going to get it, because we're not going to really ask God to do something unless we're confident He's going to do it, because we don't want to be disappointed, or if we're praying for somebody else, we don't want God embarrassed because He didn't come through and answer the prayer. So we hold back, and we'll learn later on that holding back is violating what Jesus is talking about here, because we're not really asking from our heart. So the order here is you desire, choose what you desire. We'll learn later on it's best to have something based on the Word of God so you know it's God's will. And then when you ask Him, believe that He's already given it to you, even though you don't have it in your hands. And then once you do that, at some point, God will make sure you have it. You believe in order to receive. We'll talk later on in Romans 4, starting in verse 17. Paul talks about this thing. Abraham believed in order that he might become. We have to believe in our heart first before it becomes an actuality to our senses. That doesn't mean it's not already answered. It means we don't see the answer with our natural senses. But we've got to believe it's so in our heart first. That's not just a pipe dream. That's not just some, oh, I hope so. There's a foundation for that faith is always because we're basing our prayer, we're basing our faith on a promise God has made. So the certainty is the certainty of God's Word. And that's very, very important. We'll talk about that down the road. But I want you to see this functional definition, that faith gives us the same confidence that we would have if we could touch it, if we could see it. We have that same confidence simply because we've asked God, believing that we've received it. So that's the essence of what really faith is. We must believe now when we ask that it's already ours. Very important. And everything we talked about tonight, we're going to break down as we go forward with expanding on all this. But I wanted to take these two definitions, the classic definition defining it, and then the functional definition as Jesus was teaching them. Remember, this is a teaching example He was giving them. It wasn't just, He was using this real life situation where they saw His faith in action, and that triggered them to ask Him, how did you do that, basically? And He was teaching them how He did it. One of the key words in there is whosoever shall say. That means that's not limited to His disciples. Means it's not limited to Peter, James, and John. That means is whoever will comply with these requirements, comply with faith, God will do the same thing for you and me that He did for them. Exciting to begin to learn this thing. So what I want to do now is leave you with some questions, and then we're going to turn you over to your leader. Question number 1. We need to be honest about this because you've heard a lot of information. How well do I now understand what faith is? And if you don't, talk about that. How well do I now understand what faith is? Number 2, can I now understand why faith is so important to relating to God? Can I now understand why faith is so important in relating to God? And number 3, can I now locate whether I've really been walking in faith or not? Remember, this is not to condemn anybody, or I'd have to be condemned. We're learning to find out, we're examining, are we really in faith? Because we need to find out where we really are so we can find out what faith really is, and so we can get walking in that faith so God can do in our lives and through our lives what He wants to do. Exciting to learn these things together. So I'm going to turn you back over to your Connect leader right now, just believing God's best for you as you share and pray for it together. And we love you and appreciate you. Thank you again for being part of the Connect group tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next month. In the meantime, may God richly bless you, and we'll see you in June.